Officer Talani informs her boss, Officer Abani, about the kidnapping that occurred at the all-girls secondary school, with the prime suspect being an individual named Black Shadow. She expresses her desire to take up the case, but Officer Abani dismisses her by trashing the case file, claiming there is a more important task for her. He then calls in Officer Juliet, who is less serious and more lighthearted compared to Officer Talani. Officer Abani informs them that they have been selected to accompany Governor Atanta of Dakawa State to an event in Lagos. The governor specifically requested 2 of their most beautiful police officers. Officer Talani objects, stating that she is a police officer and not an escort, and that she should be handling more significant cases. Officer Juliet, however, eagerly accepts the task, much to Officer Talani's disappointment. In Lagos, they accompany Governor Atanta to a meeting with Lebanese investors at a luxurious hotel. Dressed in elegant evening gowns, they watch over the governor from a distance, following his instructions. After the meeting concludes, one of the Lebanese investors arranges for the governor to spend the night with a young lady. As the lady dances seductively, she hypnotizes the governor and leads him out of the hotel. Despite Officer Talani and Officer Juliet's attempts to follow, the governor forbids them from doing so. The lady leads the governor to a car, where he is subsequently kidnapped. The officers chase after the car but fail to catch up. In another scene, a young man named Chindu and his friend Buta sneak out of their home with the help of Chindu's girlfriend, Tadan, to avoid their landlord, whom they owe rent. Tadan drops off Chindu at his new workplace and encourages him to do his best. Buta playfully teases them as they exchange kisses. Tadan complains about the fact that Buta is always around them, and Chindu promises to sort things out with Buta soon. However, upon arriving at the office, Chindu learns that he, along with other workers, has been laid off due to government policies. Devastated, he and his colleagues begin protesting against the unfair dismissal. The protest attracts the attention of the police, who arrest Chindu and the others for disrupting the peace. Meanwhile, Buta returns home to find that their belongings have been thrown out by the landlord. He gets into an argument with the landlord, but their conversation is interrupted when Fuka, a familiar face, emerges from the house. Buta recognizes him, and they exchange pleasantries. After Fuka leaves, Buta, in an attempt to secure their place, promises the landlord that he and Chindu will pay double the rent without consulting Chindu first. The landlord agrees to this arrangement. The governor's son, Josiah Atanta, is confronted by a man named Agagoro, whom he owes money to. Josiah is forcibly pulled out of his car by Agagoro's bodyguards, and he pleads for his life, promising to repay the debt once his pipeline project is operational. However, Agagoro knows that Josiah is lying because the deal has already been taken over by the Lebanese investors. Josiah is beaten up and given 48 hours to repay the loan or face the permanent loss of his car. Agagoro drives off in Josiah's car, leaving him injured and devastated on the roadside. Meanwhile, as if Chindu's problems couldn't get worse, he is released from jail after his former boss bails him out. However, he receives a call from his mother informing him that his father is critically ill with liver problems and requires 2 million naira for surgery. In order to buy some time, Chindu concocts a story about issues with his cryptocurrency wallet. His mother pleads with him to help and he promises to provide. Chindu returns home feeling even more upset after Buta tells him about their deal with the landlord. Tadan comes over and he shares his troubles with her. She tries to pray for his father and offers to ask her parents for the money, but Chindu bluntly refuses. Just then, Buta calls them to watch Chindu on TV, as he is being paraded by the police for disturbing the peace. Chindu begins crying as he watches himself on TV. Meanwhile, Officer Talani and Juliet are reprimanded by their boss for failing at the task they were given. They are later arrested for the governor's kidnapping under the directives of the deputy governor. They plead innocence and ask Officer Abani to defend them. He agrees to do so but tells them not to get their hopes up. On their way home, Officer Talani laments over their unfortunate situation, but Officer Juliet remains indifferent, which upsets Talani. Talani asks Juliet why she behaves the way she does, and Juliet informs her about losing hope in the police system when she also encountered Black Shadow but was not given the necessary resources she requested. Officer Abani covered it all up to avoid punishment for ruining their chances of ending Black Shadow's terror. Talani apologizes, expressing that she never knew what happened. She begs Juliet to help her clear their names and, to do so, they overpower the 2 officers driving them home to face trial. They drive off in the van after throwing the officers out. The governor is asked by his kidnappers to pay $5 million into an offshore account or face death. However, the governor only has 70 million naira to his name. To make matters worse, it was his son who organized the kidnapping to extort money from him. The kidnappers inform the governor's son that his father cannot pay the ransom money, and he desperately asks them to harm his father a little, hoping it would compel him to pay up. The kidnappers insist that the governor does not have the required amount in his account, as they have checked. Now, Josiah is in double trouble as the kidnappers demand their own share of the money, regardless of the failed deal. Officer Talani and Juliet are now wanted and try to seek help to clear their names. In their pursuit, they chase after a young man named Tobin Williams, whom Talani knows. Shindu insists that they move out of their home since they can no longer afford the rent, but Buta refuses, believing that the money will come eventually. Buta then suggests that Shindu accompany him to an unknown location that he promises will help solve their problem. Josiah is visited by his father's personal assistant, who informs him about a life insurance policy his father had in place, with him as the sole beneficiary in case of his father's death. The insurance is worth $10 million, but can only be claimed when his father dies, with a body provided as proof. Josiah is excited by this information, but pretends otherwise in front of the personal assistant. Officer Juliet and Talani catch up with Tobai and ask him to provide new clothes and a car for their escape plan. They threaten to reopen his previous criminal charges and send him to prison if he refuses. Tobin offers them clothes and pretends to search for a car, but instead, he contacts another officer and informs them about their location. Juliet sees the officers approaching through a window just in time, and they escape through the back door. Meanwhile, Chindu and Buta visit Buta's friend, Olga Collins, who is a cab driver, for help. When Collins leaves to engage in a sexual encounter with a waitress, Buta steals his car but lies to Chindu that Olga Collins gave him willingly. Chindu wants to ride alone, but Buta refuses. Their first customer through the Taxify app gets scared away by Buta, leading to a heated argument. They decide to stop using the app and pick up passengers on the road instead. They unknowingly pick up the kidnapper and his accomplice, who have the governor in their trunk. When the kidnappers briefly leave the car, Buta checks their bag and finds a large sum of money and a gun. They drive off with the money, unaware that the kidnappers have taken a picture of their license plate. Shindu feels guilty and wants to return the money, but Buta insists on keeping it. Meanwhile, Mr. Collins calls Buta to ask for his car back, but Buta dismisses him and asks Chindu to keep driving. The kidnappers track down Mr. Collins and interrogate him about the car. Chindu learns that Buta stole the car instead of it being willingly given. Upset, Chindu gets out of the car, leading to another argument. They hear the governor's noise from the trunk and discover him tied up. They release him, explaining they are innocent taxi drivers. As they discuss their next move, the governor turns on his phone's location, leading the police to mobilize for rescue. But the deputy governor asks them to stand down as he hoped the governor would die and he would be appointed as the new governor. The governor calls for Officer Juliet and Talani for help. When they answer, they record his conversation, but Buta takes his phone and they realize the police are being called. But before then, Chindu already tells his name and both officers use it to get his info and home address. The kidnappers have Olga Collins captive and force him to reveal Chindu's address. Chindu and Buta secure the governor at a location while discussing their options. Buta threatens the governor with the gun, and the governor tries to make a deal with Chindu, criticizing Buta in the process. Officer Juliet and Talani arrive at Chindu's house, but they are confronted by the landlord and then by the kidnappers. Officer Juliet recognizes the lead kidnapper as the notorious Black Shadow and his mother, and they threaten to kill him. Black Shadow reveals that the governor's son wants his father dead. A shootout ensues, which gets the landlord and Black Shadow's mother killed. Meanwhile, Buta and Chindu attempt to extort money from the governor's son by faking the governor's death. They send a photo to the son, who believes his father is dead. Josiah agrees to pay them, but sends Black Shadow to pick up the body and eliminate Buta and Chindu. Officer Juliet survives the shootout and follows Black Shadow as he heads toward Buta and Chindu's location. The governor wakes up, and they inform him of his son's intentions, which leaves him devastated. Josiah arrives, and to make him believe that his father is dead, Buta gives the governor some pills to make him temporarily unconscious. Josiah believes the governor is dead, and sends them the money before revealing it will be reversed. Black Shadow arrives and kills Josiah. Agagoro and his bodyguards also arrive, but leave when they see Josiah's body. Officer Juliet shoots Black Shadow, saving Buta and Chindu. In the final scenes, Governor Atunta is arrested, and Officer Talani survives the shootout. Officer Juliet and Talani are rewarded for their bravery. Buta buys an expensive club in Lagos, and Chindu marries his sweetheart, Tadun. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting movie recaps like this.